Hello, this is Robert Koch. I have a sign language interpreter here, Amelia, who will be voicing for me. We're here at S&P Global office in Denver, Colorado. This is where I work as a lead architect. And I'd like to demo some of you that maybe aren't familiar with Lambda. We sign it this way. And we'll talk about how we would use it, build it, and how we can connect to different serverless services in AWS. I would first like to introduce what Lambda is. So Lambda in AWS, from its perspective, it's called a compute, one of many different compute layers, actually. They have an EC2, which is another compute layer. The EC2 is a virtual machine. The virtual machine you can spin up to host, log in through, do SSH, Linux, Windows, remote desktop connectivity. But it tends to be pretty expensive. Virtual machines in general on AWS are pretty expensive. Actually, one of the most expensive service that AWS provides. So if you have Lambda, there's a simple run code that integrates with different systems. And I'll be showing you those different systems that Lambda can interact with. You can also commoditize your development. So if you write a function as one simple thing, maybe one specialty, if you want multiple functions, which most people do, you can develop one function and call another function, and then call another function. In a way, you can compartmentalize your entire system. So if you have one huge program, like a black box, that's not usually preferred. So you have multiple functions, that makes more logical sense. So that sort of comes into play with AWS. And you know exactly what's happening by commoditizing those functions. Also, it's a one-stop shop for mobile devices and third-party apps. On the web and IoT, which is Internet of Things. You can communicate with multiple outside entities, which are useful for mobile devices, API gateways, and which is another AWS service. That can talk to Lambda, and Lambda maybe talks to a database or maybe S3, and then it will communicate back to the mobile app. The security is really a key thing in AWS. It's very, very, there's a huge emphasis on security. With AWS itself, it being in the cloud, anybody could get in theory. So the security is really emphasized. We have IAM, which is identity management, which is triggered policies for a specific user who can have limited access to services in AWS, for example. So it's a pretty great tool. It's definitely a place that you will be touching in your, you will be going through in your AWS journey. Lambda can also trigger, but triggered by events, like for example, CloudWatch. If you need to set sort of a time loop every minute or every 2 minutes, for example, it can fire off a Lambda function or something in S3 that you maybe want to put in a bucket. It can drop something in there and it can fire off Lambda from that point. Behind the scenes, Lambda is really great for as an EC2 service. It's just a function. There's EC2 instances, and you can call a Lambda function. Maybe some people are criticizing Lambda that it takes a long time to fire off initially, but as it goes along, it gets faster and faster. So initially, it has to spin up the service behind the scenes first. And then as things progress, like I said, it doesn't really like a cold start, but like if you're writing a blog, how do you trick your Lambda into starting up and running faster from the first second? The ecosystem looks like this in general. It can talk to multiple services, like I mentioned in AWS. Kinesis, which is a streaming technology. As new data comes in, it will notice the new data and fire off Lambda from that. It has an SNS, or simple notification system. That's good for adding a topic. And then maybe you feed something into SNS. It can trigger Lambda, or Lambda can trigger SNS. It can go either way. DynamoDB is Amazon's preferred NoSQL database. So you can add a record or delete a record. Or maybe there's data on DynamoDB that's expired. You can set up, for example, in this data specifically to expire. Lambda could also write to it. S3 buckets are like a file system. Redshift is an MPP, massive parallel processing database that competes with Snowflake. The last talk we had here with Adam, he had mentioned Snowflake. So that's a direct competitor with Redshift. It will write records, receive, read, document. Simple email services. Lambda can send an email blast, for example. API gateways, those are used for REST APIs. You can use a Git or a post and it will fire off Lambda. So really Lambda interacts with many different AWS services. So it's a nice tool to have in your toolbox. And the knowledge behind it. That's why I wanted to give this presentation today about Lambda. So now I can show you around the code, but wait, you have to know the plan of what we're going to do. So I wrote it out here. First, we're going to build a Lambda code using Python. I practiced 3 times before, so if it gets weird again, be patient with me. We'll test it locally, and then we'll test it on AWS. And then I'll show you around the security, IAM security, how it's secured through Lambda, and then how to deploy with a library. Python has a ton of libraries. So remember, behind the scenes, you have the EC2 Linux server that I mentioned earlier. It's all of those Python libraries. So I'll show you how to bring that into the Lambda function. And at the end, I have just a list of references. That's pretty much all for the slides that I have now. So we'll start with the code. If you have questions or anything, just wave or chat or do it on your video anyway so that we can get those answered. So this is the management console. Oh, is the chat disabled? Let me see. So this is the AWS management console. You can see many different services within AWS listed here. There's really too many to name, too many to cover in one short little session that we have today. But the first thing we see is like a few things like in EC2, S3, RDS. We'll talk about RDS in the next discussion. It's a relational database service. Redshift is on there, IAM, so you can search type by typing in the search field here, and it'll pop down anything that you're looking for. It might be a little hard to see, when you're looking through all of the services, so typing is a nice, quick, easy access. You can also put in a generic term, and it'll list anything that's related to what you're searching for. So you can see all the different things associated with compute, the different layers. So Lambda can run the code without a server, which is pretty fancy. I have different Lambda functions that I've built. We'll reuse some. For now, we can create a new one and see what it looks like for you. So let's create a function. There's different blueprints. There's a repository. I think that's a new thing where you can write the code and upload and save it. Use it again and again and again. It's a pretty exhaustive. So here's all the different sort of blueprints you can use. I can show you how quickly to get an object from one place to another, like in an S3 bucket to trigger from S3 to write. I'm curious to see what's in here. So there's the library import. You can put a record with the bucket name there, and it will pull in whatever kind of object, Excel, CSV, PDF, and it will respond. It just gives you an idea. I don't think anybody necessarily needs that specifically, but it's nice to see how it works. So let's go more basic. You can use Scratch. Live coding. Python 6 or 3.6. The role that involves the IAM security. So we have a new role with Lambda, basic Lambda permissions here. It's fine. So it's doing a lot of things in the background. So it's setting up EC2, writing code to it, setting up security, many different things going on. All Lambda functions that are there in the Python file are by default. Lambda underscore function.py. We'll wait for it to come up. It'll be some pretty simple code. So I'll pass the JSON code through the method. It automatically has two parameters in the method. First is content, and the second is events. So, but it's all included in the JSON that gets passed through. So we'll give it a second. Typically it's faster, but I think my network's a little slow here. So. The environment variables, that part is where you can put values that you want to store and show in the code. Maybe you want to have a common function that does the same thing, but the environment variable changes, so you can change that. Maybe for dev or production, you can put something in there, whichever environment. That's one idea. Or username, password to an external site. The tags are really key to managing costs in AWS. Typically, they'll put whoever owns that Lambda function. So I could run a report and see by the tags the ones that I'm not using or don't need anymore. And then I can delete it, or I can figure out how much something is costing. So if it costs too much, then I can adjust that. You can adjust your roles. Once you set up Lambda functions, you're not stuck with it. You can adjust and play around with the settings. VPC is AWS. You can set up a VPC and make it a very secure environment. Nothing could come in or out unless you, by default, of course, nothing can come in and out unless you set up security, like route tables, security groups, an open port that you can get in and out through. Maybe try refreshing and see what happens. There we go. So like I said, there's the event and there's the content. So I can run it and test it. So we'll save it and then we'll test it as is. It looks like there's a syntax error here. Probably because it's not escaped. So you can see the error, it tells you right away if it's good or bad. So maybe it's the escape. Now the rest of it's green. Let's see. When it's black, that's when you have an error. So now you can see it's successful message. So now I can show you how I develop in Lambda. Maybe, I don't want to play around on the server and deal with that. So I start with the basic local environment. I'm comfortable with my code and Pythoning and running all of that on my local machine. I have a script that's ready because I didn't want to bore you with watching me code. So I'll show you that. So this will create a PDF file on the fly, essentially. It'll adjust some values and make a PDF and put it in the S3 bucket so I can show you. Here's what the code looks like. So you saw that Lambda manager, that's the same on the Lambda console. Same as what you see here. I can print. It's the same concept as a JSON file. So you have value 1 and value 2, same thing. Same thing there. Run PDF method is there. You take the Python PDF library, you can already see an example code from the website. FPDF library is what it's called. And this is the key that's open to the public right now, but after this call, I'll delete it, so it's not a problem. So you can see the key. And then it will upload to an S3 bucket called AWS Serverless Rob K. Each bucket name in the entire world has to be unique. No one else in the world has that name currently. If you tried to create an S3 bucket right now with that name, it would fail because I got it first. Believe it or not, it has to be a unique name. I'll show you the bucket. So I already have some test files on there. One that I recently did testing before the call, of course, and some other ones. 3:19 GMT, -6 because I'm in Mountain Time. So it's now 3:56. So that's another method that runs Excel to, generate Excel report or documents on the fly, but I won't really go through that too much. I can show you where, I can share the code if anyone's interested. I'm going to change the name here, EC2. I was wondering how to test Lambda on a local machine. So I went to a website and found some cool node library that I could pull in and then run Python against that. So that's what I did. I can show you the website. Sorry, it's not a node, it's a Python library. So it'll see the function and the Python file, and then the event in JSON. That's what we're testing. Was what I showed you before. So it'll pull together and run it. So that line will do all the work for us. So I type that in as is, run it. Remember, I'm on my local machine. So it's sending it to the S3 bucket. Hey, it worked. The demo god's with me today, apparently. So you can see the tests there. Okay, look how it worked. There you have it. That's the PDF file. Nothing too exciting. So now it's generated less than 1 minute ago, looks like 3:58. So that's how I can test Lambda functions on my local machine first, and then upload them to Lambda. But I can show you something. You can see what happens here. Copy the whole code. One of your mics seems like it might be on, so if you could mute, that would be great. So now I'll add the code that I had. Simple as that, right? We shall see. So hit the library, the code, the event first name, last name. You can see here we have to change some of the values. Save that. That's 3. That's 3. So now let's test it. Is it complaining about something? It can't import the Lambda function. Let's see why not. The name of the function, it seems that it doesn't like it. Let's see. So that's fine. There. Something else that it doesn't like in this file. Seems it just doesn't like it because, oh, I see the error. I looked at the error message in the wrong place. If you go down, it says there's no module named to this file or this section open. So how do I add a library to the Lambda. I can show you how to, the reason why there's no library, I can show you. A bit too big here. Python 3.6. The libraries are already on Lambda. That's it. There's no open PyXL. So how do we get that there? I can show you that now. So in my code, I have open PyXL there. So that means that I have to add the library into my code first. And then I can package it into one simple file or one zip file to upload the whole thing into Lambda. It's kind of an interesting trick because when Python puts its library like on Node.js or PIP, they always go to some sort of folder somewhere in your computer and you never can remember where it is. You always have to search for it and figure out where it puts it. But I can show you a trick. Let's try it, if I remember correctly. Is that right? We'll see. So target to that folder, meaning it'll be local, where that folder that I am in it right now, it's got the PyXL library for Python. So it does that for different libraries. It has PDF, PyXML. Seems like it has some other libraries that are in that folder that are popping up now. Some cached, some not. Not really that important, but we'll just have to wait to see if everything's there. And then we can zip it. In the file here. So you can see in the zip file, you can see all of the files are in there. So I'll upload that to Lambda. Let me get my windows sorted here. So now I'll go ahead and upload that. So you can see I have inline, and you can edit the code there, or upload as a file, or you can put in an S3 bucket. All of those folders into one bucket and then pull those. So there's 3 options. We'll just go ahead and upload. So we'll upload it and save it. It'll store everything. Could take a little while. Let's see. And then it'll automatically show the code that I had on my computer right in there. Just change the code in there. Got the bucket. Everything's the same. All the same code. So we'll run the PDF and see what happens. Okay, so save. And this will be tested before. So we'll save it and test it. But you can see the libraries, right, that are listed there. FPDF, Open, PYXL. That's how you can get your libraries from different places and place them into your Lambda function. So I hope that works. Failed again. Let's see. Seems that the key didn't exhibit our, I think that's the old key. AWS is watching it and they can stop it, so let's see. No, just kidding. Let's see. I'll copy the key. Hopefully that will work. There is a better way, but I can show you. Okay. So that's with the updated key. Let's see. Successful. So you can see that there. It's green now with no errors. Great.
Bucket.
The bucket will have the PDFs in it. We'll see. Sometimes I like to do a new tab and leave the Lambda alone and open a new tab for different services. That can sometimes be helpful. Whew. Test 4 is there. So that was the successful test that we just completed.
Sure.
So you don't want to show off your private key to the world. I'll show you how to protect that. You take it out, resave. So now we'll go to set up a IAM role. You can see the role, you can go into it and edit that specific role. So now we're in IAM. Lambda basic means it's running a Lambda function and that's it. So I'm going to add a new policy to the S3 bucket, which adds a record. Anybody can, within the account here, I'll attach a policy. I'll search S3. So you can see here full access. You can go ahead and add that. Attach the policy. So I gave S3 full access. Now let's try the Lambda function again. Test 25. And it's successful again. We'll see what the bucket has. So test 5 is there. And that's really it for the Lambda show. I hope I showed you how, kind of what what the Lambda function's accomplishing and how you manage security, how to write to a database, how to use Python code to write to any relational database or RDS. You could write to DynamoDB. I mean, there's many examples out there of how you could use Lambda functions. You can Google something like this. You can see that you can use that example and write to DynamoDB. Pretty simple stuff. Of course, there's a learning curve that you have to get through, but if you keep on it, I think it only took me 2 or 3 hours to understand the concept of how the Lambda functions and how to get around in it. So it isn't for the faint of heart, I will tell you that. But any developers, IDE anyway. So there are my references of the websites that I used to help demo today, to help demo the Lambda function today. Lambda also has other like Azure and Google Cloud capabilities. They function very similar. It's pretty much the same concept. So you can see here, there's the different pricing at the bottom here. The first one's like 1 million requests is free. So that's more money for beer, right? But then they start charging. Everything on the cloud is scalable. So you can handle consuming costs because every time you use Lambda, you're using another service at the same time. So if you're writing to an S3 bucket, that costs money to store things there. So they make money one way or another. Is free really free? No, of course it isn't, to a point, and then the charges will incur. You can open a screen and ask me any questions, or you can use your voice. The interpreter should be able to hear you. So if there's any questions, the floor is open. I think it's great, but there's a few scripts, you have to see, that are maybe better on AWS or better with a Lambda function. How do you, what would you say the positives or negatives of running, or putting things wherever? What's the necessary benefit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. To communicate with different services on AWS, Lambda is perfect without any impediment. So if you're talking from one service to AWS, maybe there's a problem with the network communication. Maybe it's taking a lot of time, it's a lot of latency going on. Lambda is designed to work with other systems on AWS very, very well. And you remember I was talking about compartmentalizing your code in a serverless environment or microservices. They prefer to be smaller chunks. They're easier to debug and maintain. For example, if the code, in-house code, you're trying to figure out where something is, or if it's a black box environment, there's too many lines of code. It can help you kind of hone in and navigate more efficiently. It's an efficient coding practice. So those are some of the benefits. Seems like the video might be a little bit frozen there. Okay, great. So I can see obviously the different languages. Oh, right. Yeah, great. So you can use .NET, Java, Python, Ruby, custom runtime. You can put .NET Core 2.2 in there and use that. Or maybe if you want, you prefer to use Rust, whatever you want to put in there. It's very flexible and it all runs on Linux. So anything, really. Cool. Thank you. Throttle here. I don't know. All right. Can you call a Lambda function from anything, or does it have to be in AWS? It uses an API gateway. I can show you really quick. We have time. So you can use a REST URL and set up that, and you can fire off the Lambda function there. I deleted it. This is an old API gateway, but you can see that the Lambda's on the right. Turn sideways here. So you can fire the Lambda function from outside and then bring it in that way. So you can test it. It won't work, but you should, maybe I should add that to the talk next time. Yeah, definitely. There's different API gateways, REST, if you want to convert your website to something along these lines, you can call the Lambda, which can call the database, and it will return the record back to your app. Or it's good for mobile function, or yeah, I guess I would say mostly good for mobile or websites. Yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of flexibility with this tool. So it doesn't really take much time. You just run it. Great. Initially, it'll probably be slow. Like, remember the first function of the day, probably a little bit slow. Like I was mentioning before with the cold starts, not really a fan of, but people can hack Lambda to have a hot start every time, for example. So it does get faster and faster. Thank you. You can use CloudWatch to see Lambda function, how that's functioning, how it's performing. You can set up an alarm if there's a performance issue. I can notify you. You can see that everything's happening. There's a log here, so that's nice. Wow. You can see where the errors were. Anyway, I can show you another time, but anyway, that concludes my talk for today. I think we're pretty much out of time, so thank you so much for all of your great questions, Adam. Sure thing. Thank you. So I recorded it and I will share it on the website soon. Thank you all for attending. Thank you.
and it